Well, all right. Happy Friday, everybody. It's great to be here as we talk about the cost of quality, or rather, the cost of non quality. Uh, this will definitely be an interesting conversation because we're going to dig into what FSQA process steps often lead to costly consequences if skipped or not completed correctly. Now, there's a lot to talk about, but before we get into it, I'd like to welcome all of our new FISMA Friday friends to the series. You've come to the right place to get the latest updates, insights, and guidance around changes within the Food Safety Modernization Act. Now, this series is brought to you through the close partnership between the Acheson Group and SafetyChain. And this is your forum to not only hear practical steps to help you improve FSQA processes and meet FISMA compliance, but to also get your questions answered by the food safety experts over at TAG who present with us each month. Okay, blew through that pretty fast. I am excited now to have back with us Lacey Keesee, who has over 18 years of experience in the food manufacturing space, including meat, dairy, ready to eat, and shelf-stable products. Now, Lacey specializes in site assessments, crisis troubleshooting, root cause analysis, and sanitation program design, and has earned multiple food safety certifications, as well as herself becoming a lead instructor for the preventative controls for human food. So, Lacey, we are absolutely thrilled to have you back on FISMA Friday with us.
Thank you, Jim. And I am closing in on my 20th year. You're
Oh
making me
my
feel old,
goodness.
but that's okay. We're good.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're happy to have you again. Thank you so much.
So we want to just give some regulatory updates that we have for this month. There is a new draft guidance document out for any of you all who are producing low moisture foods, which are ready to eat. It is entitled Establishing Sanitation Programs and also taking corrective actions following a pathogen contamination event. So this guidance was released last month. It is open for comments. You can find it on the FDA website, fda.gov, and they're going to leave it open for those comments for 120 days. So the clock is ticking. If that's something that you would like to read through, make sure you get your comments in. So today we are going to go over a new metric that we're seeing in the industry over food safety, where we talk about the cost of quality. And in the past, Jim mentioned, we've seen the cost of non-quality, which everyone is familiar with when you have a product destruct or a food safety deviation or hold. But this gives you more of a round generalized idea of what your entire food safety and quality system should be doing for your company. So we all know that when you have a misstep or a deviation in your plan, it can be very costly. So looking into those food safety and quality processes that we all have built will help us prevent these type of failures. And this can be lumped into different categories such as audits, recalls, your supplier compliance, because we all know that these things can affect your operation. It can hurt your brand, your quality brand name, and also your customer relationships. And we're going to be exploring some of those hidden metrics that we should be looking into when you have a poor quality product or a food safety failure. We're going to look at the supplier compliance and how important that is from a traceability standpoint and food safety standpoint, and how it can impact your risk. And we're going to identify some of those metrics that you can start to track and use data to help drive down some of those overall costs to your efficiency and your operations. Some of the tools that we can talk about, that manufacturers are using with this new program and metric to improve their compliance and also their processes, and making sure that efficiency and food safety is the thing that we're focusing on. So we're referring here to total costs that are taken or incurred when you are setting up these programs to ensure that you're producing safe foods for your consumers. This also will, of course, include regulatory requirements and quality standards for your customers, because that's what they come to expect. That's what they want delivered each time and every time. It will also include your costs that are related to prevention, detection systems, the data programs that you can implement, and also when you have failures of your food safety and quality programs. Because if we are properly tracking these metrics, we should be able to see any type of trend that could help us minimize risk, that could help us include the proper resources to help track and trend and prevent these things from happening, and will overall improve your compliance metrics within the regulatory realm of, FSMA, the USDA, HACCP, and also, of course, your GFSI schemes. So first off, we're going to look at a metric that we like to call prevention cost. And this can be any of the investments that your company or firm are making to avoid those food safety and quality issues. One of the most important ones that we love to see is your training program. When you're first bringing employees in, they need to be trained. They need to understand why the processes are important, why the rules are in place, and the way that they do things and how it can affect food safety and that overall cost of your compliance or your quality. This has to do with everything from your food safety plan, your hazard analysis, all the way down to your GMPs and your other food safety programs that you have written into ensure your quality and food safety compliance. The sanitation and hygiene programs are extremely important when it comes to avoiding foreign material and microbial contaminations. We all know that sanitation is the major component of an allergen control program. So if you do not have good hygiene and good sanitation, you cannot start up with a good, clean process. So ensuring that you're doing the proper inspections during your pre-operational startup, ensuring that folks who are responsible for working on equipment and cleaning equipment know that they should be looking out for foreign material or for poor equipment repair that could cause micro issues or allergen cross-contact issues. And an overall good sanitation and hygiene metric will help you understand just how well you are cleaning to prevent these issues from happening, which could shut down your operation, place product on hold, make customers unhappy, or affect your brand name, because we do not want to have anyone have a foreign material issue where they get injured, or a micro or allergen issue where they could get sick. Ensuring that you have your supplier audit program and approval program in place, and doing some type of raw material testing and verification, especially when you're dealing with those high-risk ingredients, being aware of any industry recalls for certain suppliers or outbreaks where folks are getting sick from a certain microbe, and understanding, do we have the proper protocols in place to switch over suppliers if we do find an issue, to seamlessly continue our production without any type of halt or failure. Also, you want to ensure that you have some type of process validation, whether we're talking about the equipment itself, your CCPs, the sanitation and hygiene program. All of these processes should be properly validated to ensure that they are eliminating or preventing those hazards or risks from occurring. This can greatly improve your prevention and will help you see issues before they occur. ensuring that your preventive maintenance program is working properly and setting up matrix to observe and understand the data there when you have equipment that could be failing earlier than it's supposed to, or a manufacturer defect when your equipment does not do or operate as it is expected to. And validating all of these processes can be a great avoidance of cost, because you want to ensure that you are installing the proper equipment with the correct materials for your food and process, and making sure that it is sustainable and performing as the OEM required. So when we talk about, that original equipment manufacturer, they should be helping you set up the specs and matrix for the cleaning and preventive maintenance of that equipment. And then last but not least, under the prevention costs, you can also track the implementation of your food safety management systems. Whether or not your hold program and your complaints program are working appropriately, and if you have the correct protocols in place when you do have a food safety deviation or a food safety complaint, ensuring that you've got quick follow-up and reactions if a consumer calls in with some type of illness complaint, so you can start that investigation right away. Having proper CAPA programs if you come under some type of regulatory issue or other food safety deviation within your plan, to make sure that you're tracking and trending and solving that problem and getting to the root cause can be tracked. So all of these things are part of your prevention, and we want to ensure that we are avoiding those food safety issues. That's the entire point of FSMA and everything that we're going through right now with the newer version of FSMA 2.0, training. When we get into the second cost of quality metric, we're looking at what we like to call appraisal costs. So that is more in your continuous monitoring and also your inspection activities. So if you have in-process monitoring or inspections, we all should be aware of our environmental monitoring programs and requirements, using this data to track and trend how your environment of your facility is being cleaned and how it is performing. Understanding your product testing for any contaminants that could make people sick. So your micro with your pathogens, allergens, and your foreign materials. Again, with your supplier verifications, because a lot of the times what's coming in, we want to ensure the raw material is good and up to our quality standards to ensure that food safety, and also ensuring that the supplier is giving us exactly what we are paying for. So understanding and verifying the supplier and the expectations that you have for them as a customer. We all know that our internal and third-party food safety audits are important, but are we actually tracking what they are doing for us? Are we able to implement them properly in order to prevent an issue from occurring? Are we tracking the right internal audit findings within our programs, and do they match up with what we're seeing from a GFSI standpoint, a customer audit standpoint, and even an FDA or USDA standpoint? You want to ensure that you are aligned with your internal audit program, that you have good trained auditors who understand the product and your processes, who understand the regulations. And it's also a really great idea to rotate through auditors so you're not seeing the same thing all the time. And you want to drive to completion to make sure that you are actually using that program to make it work for you, rather than just checking a box within an audit scheme to say, yeah, we have an internal audit program. Make sure that it's working and finding issues, and that you're able to close out those issues along the way. Last but not least, under the appraisal cost metric, we have calibration of your measurement instruments. So of course, this has to do a lot with your preventive maintenance and your equipment program, and understanding, do we have the correct equipment? Is it calibrated properly on a regular basis? Is it routine, or do we need to be looking into doing more type of standardized testing for our equipment, especially when you are talking about equipment that is monitoring CCPs or preventive controls and their critical parameters and values? So the third metric that we are seeing at TAG with the cost of quality has to do with your internal failures. So this is what we in the food industry have been used to seeing, your non-compliance, the cost of non-quality, throwing product away or having to put product on hold where it does not make it out to distribution in time can lead to costly supplier or customer shortages. Rework takes time with your operation, takes time away from your efficiency standards. And anytime you have a non-conformance, that's going to take your line downtime. We also could be tracking waste or disposal of product holds or anything that has been deemed unsafe or not to the top quality, because we do not want any finished goods to make it out that could make someone sick or is not to our customer standards. Definitely anytime that you've got product downtime, I am sure people are already tracking that one, but that's a good one to put into this category because it's all about the process and the production value. And if you have a food safety deviation or an equipment failure, which causes foreign material or not properly pasteurizing or thermal processing product, then that can cause downtime, that can cause product waste and rejection. And these things can all be tracked under this matrix. The last one in number 3 for the internal failure costs has to do with your investigation and also your corrective actions. So we all know that we are required to have corrective actions. It's in the FSMA regulations. The USDA requires it as well. All of the GFSI schemes do, because when you have a hazard that you found, your equipment is doing what it's supposed to, your metal detector is rejecting, but you need to ensure that you understand what the root cause is for that failure. Where did that foreign material come from? How are we preventing it from happening again? And your CAPA program and that investigation into the root cause analysis should be a very tight and seamless program. You should be able to find the root cause and close out on the actions before you have a repeat issue occur, because that can also be costly. You never want to see repeat issues of a food safety failure where you do know what the root cause is just because you haven't closed out your items. So understanding where you can use a good CAPA software or a good tracking program to understand where your deviations are occurring, and if you're having any repeats or if anything in the past history can help you figure out what that investigative root cause might be. That's a super important one under number 3. The last metric we're calling external failure costs, and that's basically if you have, unfortunately, any failure after distribution. That's never what we want to hear. We do not like the R word, the product recall or withdrawal. We don't want to see the FDA come in and give us regulatory fines or take any type of actions. Also from the USDA, CFIA standpoint, stopping shipments or imports can be very costly to sit in a warehouse, and you have to pay for those while they're doing tests. So we really want to avoid this at all costs. Under this category, we are also tracking consumer complaints and any product returns or reimbursements, because that is something that can tell you where are the company consumers, really not happy with our product, which can affect the customer buyback or them coming to be a repeat customer with your products. and really understanding, what is happening, what is the root cause of these consumer complaints, especially if you're dealing with injury and illness. That's where you have to do it within the regulations as a requirement. Big one here under number 4 for your external failure can be, of course, your brand reputation. So again, if your customers don't want to be repeat buyers, if they don't see your product on the shelf because you lost shelf space and the competitor won out, and so they're going to go for a different brand instead, that's absolutely something that you could track. Your reputation and loss of market share fits really nicely into this category. Everybody wants to avoid it, of course, foodborne illness outbreaks and any associated liabilities. So when people get sick, hospital bills, different things like that can be tracked under this category. And it all has to do with, we had a issue occur after distribution, which if we're properly tracking the other 3 metrics, we are hoping to prevent those recalls, those withdrawals from happening in the first place. We don't want to get our consumers sick. We want to ensure that we are stopping things before that distribution step. So, how do we optimize using this metric? And really, the cost of quality, you're looking into the 4 different categories where we talked about prevention, where we talked about using your internal audit data, where we look at our preventive maintenance programs, our supplier approval programs, and all of these things that we want to ensure are predicting what is going to happen for us. What is the cost this quarter, and how can we shave that down for next quarter? How do we reduce that, and how do we use this data to help us see what are the things that we are losing money on? We are investing all of this prevention data. We're going to classes and doing trainings and taking the new FSMA course and hiring people who have food safety expertise, and we're building all these wonderful food safety programs. So how do we ensure that our investment is working for us? So using that prevention step, it's really important that you have a strong prevention approach where you've got that really good, robust supplier management program where you're looking into your verifications. Employee training, I cannot talk about enough, because ensuring that everyone who has to do with the manufacture of that food, no matter what their job description is, understands the importance of their job, can hear it in their own language, and can ask questions that are pertinent so they understand why food safety is important and why following GMPs and SOPs and all of these written requirements that we do so well to get our GFSI certification, and following those steps and actually understanding the why behind those steps are a really big step in prevention. Sanitation, of course, giving the appropriate time, giving the appropriate tools and the appropriate resources to manage your sanitation program, looking for defects in foreign material at startup to ensure that you're not going to have line downtime later. All of these things and investment in these programs can really help with that first metric in preventing the food safety internal issues or internal failures of occurring. Same thing goes for your internal audit program, your supplier audit program, using data software programs to manage and help track these deviations. And like I said before, your CAPAs and your consumer complaints investigations can all go into that external failure cost that we mentioned in metrics number 3 on the previous slide. Using that data, using automation to take out the human error, real-time monitoring systems, alarms, predictive analytics can all help you understand what are the issues, when are they going to occur, how are they going to occur, detecting them before they cost your company a ton of money before the product gets shipped out the door. So helping to prevent those issues from occurring, stopping the foreign material from happening, stopping the equipment failure from under processing from a thermal standpoint, etc. It's really a huge undertaking to see these data analytics systems put into place. But once they do, we've really seen them streamline the food safety and quality programs for a lot of our clients. Conducting regular audits is absolutely essential to not only your required internal audit program, but your supplier program, understanding, where are those gaps and how can you close them in a efficient nature to be able to prevent food safety errors from occurring or deviations from happening, and absolutely understanding the type of audit that you're doing, having an expert to be able to train your auditors, and also using different auditors at different times. You could even share, different auditors if you have sister facilities within your company umbrella. I've seen that as a very successful internal audit management procedure. Just because, we get that tunnel vision and seeing the same thing every day, about these issues, and it can help leverage if you're using a new auditor to go to a different facility, let's say every quarter or so. These are the things that you can identify your gaps in your internal programs so they can help you avoid any major failures that could require, some capital investments. And then, of course, your supplier partnerships. So it's really important to have great rapport and communication with your suppliers. Working partnership is highly important so you can get together when you have ingredient issues, whether they're quality or food safety, to ensure that that risk is being reduced. Because if you can stop it at the door, it's not going to cause your efficiency or your operational downtime to occur with your internal system. So looking into these preventive costs and also your appraisal costs, you can really significantly reduce those metrics 3 and 4, which is when you have the external failure costs, and it can absolutely enhance your overall food safety performance at your firm.
Looks like we are at the Q&A section. All right,
Love
Lacey.
it.
Yeah. All right. That was awesome. Yeah, we covered well, you covered a lot. I just sat here and took notes. Um, but I took a lot of notes, and I hope everybody else did too, because there's obviously a lot going on here, and I actually want to keep this last slide up, because not that one, this one. This really does cover it all, and I feel like this is a good, kind of place to start asking some of our questions, because they do kind of map to this. Overall, though, what this comes down to is traceability, tracking pretty much as you can, having a way to pull that information into a system, program, etc., that you can digest and analyze, and obviously track again potential risks that might obviously lean into some significant costs downstream. I think it sounds good, but when the rubber meets the road, it's hard in practice. So one thing that I personally wanted to ask you, Lacey, is as you're talking to a lot of these food manufacturers and walking into facilities and kind of looking at the way that they're tracking, where are you seeing kind of some of the areas for improvement, we'll just say?
That is a really great question, Jim. One of the biggest things that I have seen that can cause some, I don't want to say failure, but just delay in realization of issues is when you have, most of the time it's the quality team, dealing with consumer complaints, CAPA, foreign material issues, holds, and they're trying to basically just grasp all of these issues, which we know occur almost every day in the food industry. There's usually something that has happened almost every day of the week when you're operating 24/7. And the resources that are required to input into an Excel spreadsheet for your hold log or your CAPA log or your consumer complaints follow up literally takes so many hours of the day, and you're using different programs, whether it's Word or Excel or what have you, it sometimes can be really difficult to see the big picture. So when I go in, from a personal standpoint, and an audit a facility or try to help them prepare for an FDA visit, I usually try to look for that thread of continuity. Like I'm seeing a theme here with a certain date. You've got consumer complaints here and foreign material issues there, and you had a hold, but you released it there. And it's really being able to have a data system or some type of metric to show you before it becomes a big issue that you have a huge gap. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I always like to recommend is either using some type of software tracking program, metrics tracking program, monthly review of food safety by folks who are not dealing with it every day. Because if you've got just the quality team who are following up with it, sometimes things can get missed because they're so busy trying to not only track and trend all of this data, but do their daily jobs. And
Mhm. Mhm.
seeing that trend and seeing that one little theme that keeps coming back that's just kind of nagging at you is not always easy when you're in the middle of it. So we always like to suggest using something that will help you kind of centralize all of that data. Software packages out there that can do that from a CAPA standpoint, from a hold standpoint, that can really greatly reduce the time and energy that it takes your resources, your employees who should be out on the floor, because they're so busy putting in hold logs and putting in metrics and putting in different things they can't see. We might have a big foreign material issue here, and all of a sudden the customer comes back, and then you've
Right.
got some real problems. So I
Right.
highly recommend that. Trying to branch out and getting more than just the quality team involved is also very important. Having management understand, where are these metrics, and we love putting the cost of it all on there because that really can make some heads turn.
Haha, true. And it brings up another question actually. So if quality is tracking data a certain way, and then maybe on the operations side of the house, they're tracking their data. You mentioned maintenance earlier, so they
Mhm.
have all different ways of looking at data, but they're not necessarily sharing that information. Do you find that to be the case?
I can see a trend and a shift where folks are beginning to be a lot more collaborative and having, daily, weekly, monthly meetings where everybody kind of gets together.
Good.
It used
Yeah.
to be very siloed. And I will say that, some of the GFSI schemes requiring those monthly management review meetings and things like that. And we've started to see a shift even in company goals, that trickle down into employee performance goals, where
Mm,
they are becoming more collaborative. So it's not just maintenance is only responsible for the efficiency of the equipment and making sure it runs. Maintenance is also responsible for foreign material and tracking and trending, where is this foreign material coming from and how do we fix it? So we're starting to see that shift, which I'm really feeling positive about.
yeah, and I think you mentioned earlier that it really does have, for all of this to work, it really does need that executive, we'll just say, support.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I love that you're saying that metrics are being put together, KPIs are being put together where, the maintenance team is thinking food safety.
Mhm.
And, we talk a lot about food safety culture and the challenges. How is it that, somebody that's not necessarily tied directly day to day into food safety now has a KPI for food safety? It's getting that understanding and building we'll call it feedback loop to make sure that everybody's sharing the right information regarding obviously food safety related issues or protecting against food safety issues.
Absolutely, and you said it when you're talking about that food safety culture. It's one of the things that I'll harp on again, training. And when you have a brand new set of employees or a brand new manager or what have you, understanding where they are in that food safety culture and how they can affect it. Because you have to see it come from the top of the company down, from the CEO all the way down to the folks who are responsible for cleaning the floors and taking out the trash. They're all important, and they
Yep.
need to understand their role within food safety. And that's really, truly how you build a good food safety culture.
Okay, I gotta share this one with everybody. This one is from Renee. I don't know if you can see this, Lacey, but any advice to convince investment in prevention and appraisal costs when there's resistance, since no
Ooh,
major external failures have occurred so far? I love this question.
that
Thank
is
you,
a
Renee.
great question. Absolutely. Renee, thank you so much. So, my advice for that would be to do some research on past recalls of other companies. The information is definitely out there. You can just simple Google search it. You can look for similar products or similar processes that you are involved in, because a lot of the times we get that answer. It's like, well, we've never had an issue so far. We've got 95 on our SQF audit. And unfortunately, when you go in with that idea, it's almost like you've got blinders on. So putting the analytics to how much does a recall actually cost? How much does a foreign material complaint and a news story and losing your shelf space with your competitors taking over in the grocery store actually cost? That's where you can put that number to it to convince um, the higher ups, the investors, the board members, the folks who sign off on the capital investments, that they really could make some good changes in prevention. Because once you go through that recall, it only takes that one major failure to really regret not putting the investment in. And there are several companies over the past couple of years that you can read about on news outlets, and they have definitely prepared for the worst after it happened. Unfortunately, it was too late. So that's what I would do. We definitely have got a lot of resources on the Acheson Group website. We do put up current goings on in the food industry, recalls and stuff like that. But of course, you can also do your own research as well, and just try to tailor it to what if it did happen. And that's what we are trying to prevent. That's a great question.
Yeah, and I would just say you probably already have, or management already has, the cost associated to, say, downtime
Hmm.
or rework,
Hmm.
right? As part of, your business operations, you should know that. And, that those are really good, helpful metrics to say, well, geez, if something such as an external failure did occur, I mean, just multiply that by X. The amount of money that would be wasted from extended downtime, it just, to me, is a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Anyway, this also brings back another question around audits. We do talk about audits a lot. It's one of those things where, it's kind of like the boogeyman. The boogeyman's coming, you better prepare.
Hmm.
But as we were just saying before, with food safety culture kind of being sort of a new trend now, people are starting to hitch on to. Audit readiness seems to be sort of a theme now. So it sounds easier said than done. Do you have any advice in terms of best practices for internal or those external third-party audits to help you get better prepared for an actual audit when it comes?
To me, it's using the motto of audit ready all the time. Every day, people should be going to their workstation, to their job function, whatever it might be, and they should feel empowered to bring up any issues, whether it's GMP compliance, infrastructure, drips from the ceiling, water in the floor, whatever, because the people who are literally on the floor every day in manufacturing see it. And if you've only got one internal auditor for a 160,000 square foot facility, if you can empower the people who are on the floor to bring up issues, and then they actually get to see those issues change and implement and be fixed in a good amount of time, that's really going to make folks feel like they're being heard, feel like they have a voice, feel like they're important. I've seen some really great programs where people are receiving a lunch coupon or recognition on, the company TV screens, or maybe a monthly employee of the month parking spot for calling out and preventing food safety issues. Because little things, if they can be caught in the beginning when they first begin, can be a lot less costly to fix than huge infrastructure or ceiling leaks. So, really empowering the employees to not just come in and focus on putting your cogs out the door, whatever it is that you're
Right.
making, and then focusing on efficiency, get it out the door, get it out the door fast. But giving them the power to speak up and say, hey, this is not right. We need to fix it. Call in quality, shut the line down, and not being punitive about that,
Mm,
giving them a positive reinforcement. Thank you very much. Great job. You prevented us from holding a bunch of product and a bunch of line downtime and potentially a recall.
right. Um, and obviously that's within your facility, but we talked a lot about supplier, right? And you have here, I brought it back to the screen, supplier audits, supplier verification programs. It seems to me that there's still a lot of challenges around, we'll just call it supplier management,
Mhm.
making sure that your suppliers are giving you the right information, making sure that you're getting it in a timely fashion. There, I we've had many discussions on FISMA Friday about this, but I'd be curious if you've heard anything recently around best practices for maintaining good supplier relationships as it relates to obviously keeping um, in compliance to food safety recommendations or requirements.
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to it, Jim, when you are originally going into a supplier, the responsibility of whoever is reaching out to make that relationship. A lot of time we see it in procurement, purchasing, sales, and ensuring that those folks know and understand what are the quality and food safety standards that must be met.
Hmm.
And we're seeing another shift in where folks used to just accept a GFSI audit, a report that, we passed with a 95 last year. But unfortunately, we're seeing if you actually go to that site, you might see more than what the audit is telling you. Because, of course, anyone can get ready for an audit, especially when it's announced. But on the day to day, being able to actually see that operation and going in before it's approved to ensure that they are doing the right things right.
Hmm.
On the other hand, of course, the supplier wants your business. They want to do the right things. So working with them and on a regular basis, following up and figuring out, we have this gap. It's a food safety problem. What can we do together to help you fix it? And working with that relationship. So that way, if you do have a problem later down the road, it's established and you know who to call. You have that good rapport. You've worked together in the past to close gaps. And so if you have, a consumer complaint or maybe a raw ingredient issue that you've caught in-house, then you can just call them up and say, hey, I got this and it wasn't right. What can we do? How can we work together? And that goes a long way, rather than more of a defensive stance with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. With regarding consumer complaints, is there any, I guess, advice around this? Because again, obviously, you don't want to get to the point where you're seeing an influx of more consumer complaints coming through. But in terms of detecting the signs, something doesn't seem right. We better address it.
Mhm.
Would you say that folks are generally good at that, or is this an area that essentially needs a better or an audit of that process to make sure that we're getting ahead of complaints before we start seeing a flood of new complaints come in?
Absolutely. And auditing that process is very important. Having the process set up in the proper way so that when a concerning complaint, especially if it has to do with injury, illness,
Yeah.
the Sakota hazards, and alerting the system. So a lot of times we see you've got a third party call center who's taking the complaint and it goes into a spreadsheet somewhere, and somebody from sales might see it, and it doesn't necessarily trigger anything because it wasn't coded correctly, or wasn't put into the right category, so it didn't get to the quality investigation team or what have you. And that can really cause a lot of delays where you're not using your complaints data to help prevent issues. You can look into the complaints data, and it might be a lag time from the date that it got produced to the date that it got bought and eaten by the consumer. And so you have to really look at that with a very critical eye. And a lot of times I see where complaints are set up, well, if we've got more than 5 illness complaints in a month, then they all have to match and be the same batch code and product line before they get investigated. Well, that to me, 5 seems high. You really want to tailor that in and understand someone should be looking at those details at least on a weekly basis, just to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. Because
Mm,
especially with bigger companies, when you've got so much data coming in, it's very easy to make a mistake. And if you got a third party call center that's picking up the phone, they might not have a batch code and might just code it as complaint illness and no other information. Well, that doesn't get triggered into the investigation,
right.
but it should.
Hmm. Um, Taking it beyond there, I see here the last bullet point under number 1, implementation of food safety management systems. So you had brought this up, I think, a little bit earlier, but let's say you're, I don't know, SQF certified. And to your management, that's all you need. You're
Mhm.
SQF certified because I now can do business with these customers that I really care about, and potentially can do more business because more customers are looking for food manufacturers who are certified.
Right.
This might go back to Renee's question, but ultimately, how do you let management understand that it goes well beyond just, okay, we've got the certification, okay, we passed our last audit. This is a continuously improving process, which means, again, making sure that you have access to all of the individual data sources that could potentially tell you if there is a potential issue before it gets to a bigger one.
Yes, and that is pretty much hitting the nail on the head, because just because you get a great audit score, that is a snapshot of
Right.
a window in time. And most of the time, as we all know, when you have an audit, you know when it's scheduled, you know how to be ready. And everybody's really good at doing the right things and making sure it's clean and painted and brand new and fresh for the audit. And that comes from, a past history of getting a good audit score. Well, I think it really falls more into the food safety culture and the everyday. So I love it when I walk through a facility and the highest management team member of operations can walk me through and show me they're ugly, because that means
Amazing.
they're walking the floor every day. They're
Yep.
talking to people, they're seeing the issues, and that's how you can get that engagement, how you can get that investment, because that is where the reports come from. Like this roof leak that we've had for a month now is going to cause us a major issue. We need this much money to fix it. And let's look at all of the recalls in the past, food companies who have had a 483 or a FDA enforcement letter because when they walked in, they saw a drip. There's lots of things that you can do, but really having that proper food safety culture where it's not just the food safety and quality team, but it's everyone involved, to understand that this place where we are making food has got to be looking like we're having an audit every day. It's not about having an audit, it's about making safe food.
Right. That is right. And that is why we're here. So, all right, I am going to say that we don't have any new questions coming in, but Lacey, I think obviously this is a conversation we're going to carry on beyond just today. So, I am appreciative of all the information. Obviously, you brought out the fact that TAG has some resources. We can certainly bring those up. If you go to achesongroup.com, you can find some additional food safety notes and resources that you can tap into. Also, if you haven't seen it and heard it yet, Tag Talks is a great, great resource. Actually, Lacey, I just watched yours
Yeah,
that you did
I
with
was going to say,
Lisa.
I just did one.
You just did one, so please check it out. It's really great. It's nice bite-sized bits, but it gives you really relevant, up-to-date information about what's current. So please do check that out. Also at SafetyChain.com, we have been partnering with Tag for a while, so all of the goodness that comes out of these discussions turns into resources. So please check out our catalog and library of food safety related guidance because we have that there. So, Lacey, thank you. We love you. We appreciate all this information, and we're going to probably get back to you with some additional notes, but also ask you to come back to us and give us another update soon.
Okay, always a pleasure, Jim. I appreciate you.
All right. And thanks to everybody who joined us today, and we hope to see you next month on FISMA Friday. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.